I had so many luxuries, so much light. That's what luxury is, right? Lux is light. So much lux that you just not even in tune with what's in the ground, what's on the ground. What was the original component in the first place, lux? This is also why when you look at this system is about how you're seeing all lights. You're going into the higher realms, into the higher spaces. But make no mistake, you would need to be able to ground this, which is what happens with most people. They can't ground this. So it doesn't really come, they can't generally come back with something that's going to assist everyone in some way, shape, or form. They just got really high. And then they come back, and then they're back, hey, what's up, man? Well, yo, what's up, bro? When we gonna go trip again? And it's like, whoa, what do we gain from all of that, right? So second phase, chrysanthemum blows open. It's like now, since I know all the stages, it nullifies the fears, because when I'm going through these stages, I'm like, okay, how long? Okay, we're in this room now. All right, should last for another 4 milligrams, and we should be stepping into the next space. Meaning that being able to literally have a map, like, you know how these people are talking about how when you die, don't go into the light. Who's heard this? Like, this is the new thing passing around, or actually it's not new, but a lot of people, they've been passing around. Now, when you die, don't go in the light. So I was like, well, so you're telling me that we're going to be dead and we're going to see a light and be like, don't go there. I mean, come on. Like, does that even make sense? Would you actually be able to remember, I was watching, I read that book and I heard on YouTube, they said, don't go into the light. So don't go over there. Let me go over here. Is it really going to be that basic when you leave up out of here? Is that knowledge going to be recallable like that? Like, I would still right now say maybe, because if I impart a certain level of knowledge on you about the layers or the thresholds that you will be going through, and then let's say in a DMT journey, you start going through those layers, or your own DMT journey, right? Because you produce DMT, so you could do it also through your breath. And you start going through these journeys, and then you end up in one of these levels that I've already explained. Is it simple enough for you to say, oh, well, I'm on level 3. Okay, there's 2 more levels. Let me not even trip. Let me not think I'm going to die and never come back. Let me not try to get a hold of everything and control everything. Let me just keep floating past these vistas, because the reason why I'm seeing things breathing, like the walls breathing and the ceilings collapsing on themselves, like this is the Inception and the Matrix and all this kind of stuff, is because of what I was already explained about the stages. Can this assist you? So rather than saying yes or no, I'm just going to do both. I'm going to give you and impart to you the knowledge of the stages. And then when you go through these phases and stages, which everyone will at some point, even in death, maybe it'll be another thing that comes across and just be like, just chill. You know what's going on. Go through the transitional process. Don't freak out, because you already know about these stages. So here it goes. Okay, that was my only disclaimer and prelude to the whole thing. I just had to give you a little context around this. Okay, so what's been happening? I always say, meanwhile at the Batcave, they've been going headlong. When I say they, I'm talking about like there's an undercurrent that is the synthetic. Let's say the gods of the synthetic. Okay, they've been working on attempting to just like logically explain the death process. Okay. And the interesting thing about the synthetic is they could be right on top of the knowledge and not even know what they're on top of, but not all of them. Okay. There are some that are very adept amongst them, but in general, even certain people could be going through the experience even and going through all this, but still, because they lack the original key to themselves, they can't get through the door. They get all the way to the last phase, and then I'll explain to you what happens in the last phase. But they get all the way there, they get to the door, but they got the synthetic key. And the synthetic key can't open that final door to the original self. So it's just like, But they've walked up these levels, and I think it's important for everyone to understand these levels, because I believe personally, this is how many levels are constructed with how this plane is built, what the creators are using to create planes with, and how that all lays out and how you perceive that. Okay. So this first stage is called the threshold. Now this is broken down, I believe, into 6 stages. Okay. I sent the link across. All right, so here we are, 6 stages. All right, this first stage, now I'm just going to explain this to you just briefly. I'm not going to elaborate on this. Maybe I take a whole session to just go through this piece by piece, because right away the author was really trying to sound super smart. I hate when that happens. I mean, I can chalk through all of this, even if I have to go and read every single definition of every single word, I'm going in. But the whole thing about just trying to sound smart and using complex words is already an indicator for me sometimes of just how much the intention is to make sure other beings understand what is being written here. And then also it lets me understand how much the author is even aware of exactly what they're talking about. But we give thanks, because we're always building with each other. No matter what another being is working on, if it's always going to be for the full spectrum collective. It's just about how you're utilizing it. So look at this. So this is basically saying in phase 1, the threshold. So they're talking about administration of DMT, by the way. I didn't give you the direct context. The administration of pure DMT and the actual process that the consciousness goes through has actually already been laid out here in another article called The Monolith. It was incredible because this word monolith had actually come across the collective. This is the co-creator tribe that's in the physical space. It had come across in a day, and I was explaining it, and I had nothing to do with this article, but to come back around to this article and to see they called it the monolith was even a deeper connection. And this was because I talked about how we needed to move away from monolith systems, because in technology, you see this move away. They've already begun to move away. And if not, many big corporations have already moved away from monoliths. Also in business, they've moved away from monoliths. Now, this is interesting because this word literally says mono, which is one, but one of what? One lith, right? Which is an acronym of Lilith. Actually, Lilith is actually a portion of the moon. Okay, so this word monolith has everything to do with basically the dark side of the moon. This is what this word means. But I was thinking how, when I was in the conversation about how the monolith was all of the energy around monotheism, and how monotheism in monotheism, the real God in external monotheism is actually named monolith. And I found that really odd because all these monoliths for a moment started popping up, but they proved that they were put in the ground like by someone, but one was in, I think it was the Grand Canyon. You can Google it. All of a sudden the monolith pop up. It was all on World Star and everything. And then they found another one in Australia. Somebody else did it out there. So it's just sending it into the field. And then all that does for me is it lets me sync up all the data. If you're still thinking you're dealing with your enemy, the enemy is you. This thing is transmitting, there's transmissions going all over the place. You just need to know how to synchronize your linguistic system to allow you to decode what that transmission has to do with you. So now the term monolith, it's great to talk about, the monotheistic God. And, we can get into that and it can be glorious. But the truth is, how can we interpret just that in right now? What is a monolith? So we look in technology, a very strange logical template. And it says what a monolith system is when you build like basically every single part of it. Let's say with Amazon, all the products, all the product database, the pictures, everything, the technology, the software, the customers, everything is all in one build. That's called a monolith. Merrill Lynch, everything inside of one building. The company is right here. CEO's at the top. On his top down in this skeleton, everybody's in the corporation. They got the entities flying around. They got the logo up. But the corporation is, as you see here, as big as it may be. That is a monolith. Okay. So in a monolith system, what we often say in technology is the biggest disadvantage of a monolith system is that when it breaks, you have to shut down the entire system. So just like there's monolith apps and monolith softwares, when they push updates, you can't use the software at all while they're pushing the update. You got to wait till the update's complete. Then it starts working again. When something breaks, all of it breaks. So now the bug has already come across, because remember, this is now hyperdimensional. They're using psychedelics to explain it and what's going on, whether you know what's going on or not, or whether you think that they can even do that. They can't do that. They're not the original people. Well, you're not in the original world either, are you? So there's a lot going on here that, you know what I mean? You got to sit back for a moment and think about, where are you? This is a paradox. So the drawback of a monolith system is just that you need to reset it. Literally. We would be in there with a monolith system. One of my friends worked with Bell South, and he had the night job. It was just fun to be in there. It was like I was still young, just playing with technology. We'd be in this Bell South call center. And this is a monolith. So every time something goes wrong, man, the whole damn thing shuts down. Everybody goes crazy. So now they build systems modular. This is the way of the future. Modular. It's where each and every single defined component, and if it's infrastructure, like whatever that one component needs to function, is built within that one module. That module is also built in a way where it can be replicated. So you have several of those same modules running at the same time. And when something goes wrong, you can just pull out that module. The whole system is still running. Make an edit to that module and then do a hot fix on everything else. And then everything is still, nobody even knows there was a problem. No one even knows anything happened. That's the power of a modular system. So to me, in the respect to how all of this is supposed to go, that's what uniqueness is. Uniqueness is the modular system. It gives each person a power that even if that one being is shut down, the whole system is still functioning, because there's even a redundancy within that power structure. But everything is not the same thing. Okay? Meaning that everything in that system is not dependent on everything in that system. Now, this again, it's very paradoxical, because it's literally like, well, wow, I thought that's what we were going for. I thought we were going for that everybody depended on each other. What I keep trying to get through to everyone is that that part is not an option. It goes on in the real original world. We're all connected. We're all unified. But here, and there's a real but to that. The back end, the ass, the shadow, down here, different rules apply in certain ways. It's backwards here. You can love somebody, show them you care for them, and then they can snake you. Stuff like that can happen here. That can't happen in the original. The original would never be there. We would not be here either. If that was going on in the original, none of this would be here. Anything that decays, anything that distorts, any of that stuff, that's not there. That's here. So you have to learn how to work with this lensing system. That's adepthood. That's what adepthood is. Not being down here naive, thinking, oh, it's gonna, you're praying to God in a statue as God. That's ridiculous. No assistance will come to you. Wisdom has fled from you in this act. So it's just like, that's what's going on here. And when you observe that, you can't be ignoring that. It doesn't have to take you down. It doesn't have to make you feel bad. All of those things that's like, you need to get a control knob to your emotions. I have a control knob on my emotional stimulus in this distorted reality because every time something happens, I don't turn it off. Meaning I don't turn off my empathy, but I turn it down to the degree of what I'm willing to deal with at that moment, considering everything else that I'm also dealing with. So I'm responsible for the energy that is going on around me. I'm a regulator, if you may, the voltage regulator part of the car. right? The capacitor, I'm basically taking the energies that are coming through and I'm adjusting them to how they're going to what's useful for the environment. The sun is doing that. The sun is not giving you full beam. It's over. The sun is giving the weights and the measures of exactly what everything needs here to survive. So we have to get into the same thing, like especially as we reach this state. So let's keep going here. So now you just look at this one word and like, man, is this going to be a short conversation? It's going to be over soon. It's coming. So you got to know what a monolith is. So when we're saying reset, that's why what they're talking about a great reset, they're trying to reset their monolith. It's broke for them. They're like, it's all over the place. We're trying to bolt on new technology and old technology. It just needs to stop. We need to stop for a moment, turn it off, and then redo all the wires here and then turn it back on. That's what they want to do. Okay. Meanwhile, what we've done already is we built a modular system. We are already even beyond that. We're on the most advanced stuff. So it's like everything that we're hearing here now is the solution. It's what we did already. But I love to bring it into the space and say, hey, here's the update. Here's the real cosmic news of what's happening. Not just what the repeaters are saying on YouTube. We seldom find an original thought on YouTube. Because we still have to get to that original. Look at this. So let's go and dive into the original then. Let's explain it in a fanciful way. Let's have some fun. So the threshold as it's breaking down here is basically you enter into a space, okay? First toke. You enter into this space, and this space varies from what one person from another would experience. Because each of us have so much wild perceptions of how we're experiencing life and what's going on around us, how we treat fear, the state that we were going in, where we were going this is like how you die. You notice our ancestors were always concerned with how they were dying, not necessarily if they were dying. They're like, you built this temple over here. Put the pyramid on top right there. Put my feet towards the west. Put my head towards the east. Okay. And then put that cat when he dies inside of here. So they were not concerned about death. They were concerned about how they were dying. Okay. Because this kind of assists when you're prepping yourself for the other phases, because you're like, as we talked about, a time lord. You're used to this. The death thing is just a technology. It's for you to get in and out of different spaces. So check this out. So what they're talking about here is, in a nutshell, is that the variety of what goes on in the threshold is pretty much comical. That's why they said one can be in a million different flavors. They kind of highlight that here. Literally, that this is not something that is a quantifiable experience of what people are going through here. And I would for sure say most people never make it beyond the threshold of their consciousness. It's just too much going on. I'm going to die. Did he give this to me? Am I safe? What happened when, everything is coming up at the threshold. Okay. So this is the first toke. Generally it's like, at this point, no, I'm done. I'm okay. I don't want any more. I don't feel well. I'm ready to leave. You know how when you give somebody the weed or whatever for the first time and they're like, I want to go home. This is the threshold. Okay. So it's like, okay, you tripping. So, but what does happen in the threshold is that there is an HD. Literally, your eyes act like they have been squeegeed. Somebody went with the Windex, squeegeed off the eye, and now all of a sudden you're seeing like you're looking through some of them Ray-Bans with the other nanometer wavelength. I had a pair of Cartiers, and I was wondering, how are things looking brighter in these Cartiers? And I had to figure it out. And it's about the wavelength, right? Look at it. There's a wavelength on sunglasses, and the Cartier glasses, they had this highest wavelength, so it allows all the colors to be richer. It's not a phenomenon of the eye alone, right? So this is what happens at the threshold, and this is kind of what drives folks even more nuts, because they start seeing, and sometimes these stages also start blurring, like the earlier stages blur into the next. Obviously, you're on a journey, right? And so what also happens synonymously with this is a person starts turning on phase 2, because This is like a rocket, basically. DMT, they even have now specifically said DMT is moving at around 30 hertz. Okay, so they got it down to the hertz, baby. While you still thinking they don't know, they know. And they say actually most other journeys on some of the psilocybins, et cetera, even though no disrespect to psilocybin, that's a billion years right there. It's still moving at like 15 hertz, 10 hertz, 9 hertz. Ayahuasca, moving in that hertz range. The journey's lasting longer, less visuals, but DMT specifically 30 hertz, right? So you're on a rocket ship. So you're blasting through. Now the vision is enhanced. Your field is being white because basically, why would you have enhanced vision? Because the thing around you, the locus, as I call the husk, is cracking. At least the outside. The snake is shedding, if you may. Like we saw how the eye has that whole hexagonal thing on the back of the eye, right? So that's shedding, and right away you're able to see things a lot more clear. This is freaking you out. Then if you took a lot because your friend was like, go, 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 go. Or, I don't know. I got some friends, they just like, they're trying to do what happened when you were little, when somebody's like, breathe 5 times. And then they punch you in the chest. Like, they seem to have something to prove with how strong they want your DMT journey to be. That's just the shaman. They're like, hold it in and don't let it out. Don't let it out. You know what I mean? They just like convincing you basically to hold it in longer so you get the blast as you flying by the seat of your pants and chrysanthemum happens. Okay? This is a very important part. I'm not here to entertain you. I just want you to understand that I saw something for years and I never knew what it was. This was before the DMT journeys. When I was lucid, I would wake up and I would look at a white wall and I would see something. And I was like, man, what the hell is that? Why am I seeing that? And I would just be like, man, that's it. That's the grid. I come up with multiple conclusions because it was so vivid. I could see it all the time. It was something that it would just happen. I could even put a towel back over my eyes while I'm laying there, let the third eye close back up again because you just overexposed it with light, and then throw the towel off again and look at the wall and then see the grid again and then see it fade away. And I was like, man, what is this? And others that have been on the journey have looked up at the sky, and it's not just the sky. You see this grid, like literally even symmetrically perfect. What is it? Ta-da! This is what it is. Okay, so sometimes I get up and I see these squares. Sometimes I get up and I see these hexagons. I've seen these before over here. So all that's happening is, let's say it's like, how they let you wear that thing when you go and do your glasses, right? They go and try to figure out how, what if you're farsighted or nearsighted. And there's that big thing in front of the face and they keep moving it, meep, 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 right? And it's different magnifications. That's what this is. And it's already on your third eye. Your third eye has literally like a rotating field. That the interesting thing about these geometries, and I want to be very specific here, is that these geometries allow you to perceive certain things. When you layer, because you're basically spraying a web on everything. That's how you're perceiving reality right now. You're spraying a web over it. And that what the shape of that web is allowing you to see what you can see right now. And generally that web is square or hexagonal. It's even built in the language. So you're basically predominantly using 2 lenses on your optical system. Because your optical system is not just your 2 eyes, your optical system, you have some other stuff. You even have a heat sensor, right? You got some infrared, far infrared joint. You have a frontal lobe, and you have these things right here, which also reptiles have, that push out frequencies like this, right? So you have a whole optical system. And what I'm explaining just directly is that the optical system on the third eye is what starts firing up when you're now running on, and we'll just say in this case, now you hit 4 to 5 milligrams of dimethanol fuel. Okay. This is all that's happened. Instead of running on chicken grease, which could have you about at 0.6 hertz, now you've dropped a tetrahedric crystal in the fuel tank. This is what's allowing this to happen, okay? There's nothing here that's hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo, nothing here that's fake. What I'm explaining is that when in times they always want to make you feel like the miracle cannot be, you cannot find the components that allowed the miracle to take place. But I'm here to tell you that you can. But you have to speak a different language. You have to know what you are looking at. I saw something the other day and it said, and I'm not saying I necessarily believe it, but it said that the knowledge that was here on the earth, the true wisdom that was here on the earth, the true power that was here on the earth still needed the being to have wisdom to be able to use it. And the reason why I said I don't believe that is because I'm still in the club where you don't need to know anything to make it work. But the ancient books say, the ones that are still left, is that the key to unlock it is this wisdom that you literally, let's say, would need to know this somehow. Maybe that is just a factor of this plane. But ancestors wrote that, hey, you needed like a key here. You needed to have wisdom. Somebody needed to tell you certain things about how this operates. Then everything else made sense to you after that. But if you didn't have that, you would be kind of running around and you wouldn't be able to put the whole thing together. Something would be off. You would feel so close to the truth, but then you would still see its falsehood. That's synthetics. They're very close to what's going on, but they're not exactly what's going on. But you need to know what's going on, and you need to stop classifying what's going on as bad. Yes, this is a bad one. Because that's just going to mess up your system. It's going to send your system in disarray. You're going to take everything that you feel is bad, label it as bad, and it's going to go into this closet, and you're not going to be able to use those components to be able to work as an overlay to explaining to you exactly what's happening in the reality. This is what they talked about again, that this agenda is really all about. It's making a person to a point where they don't want to experience anything that they feel uncomfortable with. However, they also live in an ultra puffed up, ultra pacified existence. And this basically means that they will get no experience. Like if you're trying to protect yourself all the time and you're trying to be fearful all the time and be scared all the time, and then you want to have everything on your plate when you want it, and you never put yourself through anything. No kung fu, no sore leg, no sore buttocks, no working out, no nothing. And that's only going to put you in a situation to where even the smallest thing agitates you. Basically, it's like a lot of people live in the U.S. When I got here, I had to learn how to live without certain things. Like the main thing that hit me first was a cold water shower. I am not a cold water person. When I went in the shower, I was like, I know we at the beach and everything, but where's the hot water? And they were like, what do you need hot water for? The shower shouldn't take but a moment. And it was like cold water shower first. And then the washing machine was different. It's like the washing machine just washed the clothes, but you need to hang them up. And I'm like, what's good with this? And they're like, oh yeah, you just run it with your hand and spin it and then dry the clothes out, put the clothes on there. So there was a lot of stuff. Now this is normal. But before it was like, I had so many luxuries, so much light. That's what luxury is, right? Lux is light. So much lux that you just not even in tune with what's in the ground, what's on the ground. What was the original component in the first place, Lux? This is also why when you look at this system is about how you're seeing all lights. You're going into the higher realms, into the higher spaces. But make no mistake, you would need to be able to ground this, which is what happens with most people. They can't ground this. So it doesn't really they can't generally come back with something that's going to assist everyone in some way, shape, or form. They just got really high. And then they come back, and then they're back, hey, what's up, man? Well, yo, what's up, bro? When we gonna go trip again? And it's like, whoa, what do we gain from all of that, right? So second phase, chrysanthemum blows open. So you can imagine when this field is open, it starts layering itself over the reality in what's basically called supersymmetry. This is why I mentioned that you then start to see what's in the spaces between the spaces. This one's simple, though. How does that work? Well, it turns out that if we were capable of overlaying our eyes, if you may, so where this data had come from, by the way, like how did they figure it out this much, is that someone kept going on those journeys. Like I was saying, I was studying to keep going on these journeys to try to crack the language within there. And they went on these journeys so many times, they were able to start learning the language and slowing down what they were seeing. And they already were a geometry, Euclidean and non-Euclidean major. So then they were able to bring back, this is exactly what it is. So as I'm saying before, this goes into the holiest of holies. This removes the mysticism or the mist around how is a reality formulated and how we are perceiving that reality. We're doing that through what we call HUDs in technology. HUDs, GUIs. Heads up display or graphical user interface. This means that the program, even right now, the system that I'm using right now here exists with, meaning this screen, this computer is all built on codes. Stuff you wouldn't even understand what was going on. If I open the terminal and let the live module run and you see all the stuff that's making what you're seeing happen, you wouldn't really understand that because you don't understand the code, right? So to make it useful for you, we put a GUI over it. There's a system here. This is Microsoft OS, right? So the last thing they do is they put the GUI, this screen, the buttons, the clicking, all that is the GUI. So imagine then that the GUI or the HUD of what is interlaced over the third eye to allow you to perceive the reality are fields like this. Okay? This is what we were talking about, falsophenes. You remember I spoke about falsophenes. These are like when you depress your eyes really to a certain extent and you start seeing like a black and white and then geometry really briefly. They proved that other people were seeing specific shapes in there. This is it. This is non-Euclidean. This is how it would start rolling out these different geometries, right? So they were able to isolate what are all the geometries moving through this field. The field of this chrysanthemum, which is a HUD, something that you're doing, something that your equipment is doing where it's laying a blanket over how you perceive reality. And then, of course, as this HUD starts getting powered up, it starts to oscillate through multiple geometric fields. And this is what allows you to peer into the spaces between the spaces. Now, also, this is an energetic thing because now the visual cortex cannot handle the stimulus coming from this. This is also what generally takes people down. The stimulus is way too high. You're trying to define this. How does one define this? What are we looking at here? Where have I ever seen this before? Who is that? This is what the brain is trying to do. And the brain is now moving at 30 hertz this consistently, so it's getting dragged. And so this is where the lack of perception happens. The fear kicks in. As we talked about before, there's a side of the brain that is not cool with this. If it can't figure out everything of what's going on, it's already uneasy. Yo, what's going on? This is the same thing that happens with you and you end up in a strange place or in the backseat of a car in the trunk. You're going to go nuts. Where am I at? Who are you? What is this? You know, you wake up, you were in amnesia and you wake up somewhere. You're going to go nuts if you cannot figure out what's going on around you. So this is this is the brakes. When you start doing that, it starts slamming the brakes on your vibrational frequency. Fear is a frequency and it's a very low frequency. So it's pulling the emergency brake. But anyway, if you still got a rocket on, right? Now you got the emergency brake engaged and a rocket on your back. What's going to happen? Beautiful imagery there, right? The dimethanol fuel is still trying to push you past into what you're now feeling is the unknown. You have the brakes on, like, I'm done. Get me out of here. And you're still going. Okay. But most people do come down. They do figure out we have a strong consciousness. So our consciousness knows how to hit the brakes. Like you be coming down fast. All this also takes place in less than 8 minutes. All the way to the last stage, by the way. So this, what we're talking about, which will seem like light years are going by. Literally, light years are going by. However, this is only taking a moment in our space and time. Now, remember, this is not a theory. Thousands of people have already done this. This guy lays out, I think I dropped that link, the Psychonaut link in there. This guy must send it again. He lays out the whole experience. I did send that monolith link. He lays out the whole experience here through all the stages and how long it took him to get through it. He was already at the final phase in 7 to 8 minutes. So if you knew you were going to go through something like this when you were going through, would this assist? Would you just be like, yo, I already know I'm going to see Chrysanthemum. Oh, there goes Chrysanthemum. All right, here we go. Next phase, magic eye level. Once you get in magic eye level, this is like where now somehow the first level of adaptation is the magic eye level. Somehow you're like, okay, let's do this. I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through the process. This is what we would call with technology, as they mention here, a handshake. This is when two systems that can integrate but are normally not integrated decide to integrate. That's called a handshake. What this does on the magic eye level is it starts pulling the field itself into, and how that's more easily explained is, you remember those things that they used to have at Sharper Image where you would stand there all day trying to look at that thing and they'd be like, yo, it's a baseball player in there. And you're just sitting there like, I don't see it. And they're like, okay, you need to cross your eyes. And they would be trying to give you these directions of how to see it. Right. So as the text says here, in the image on the left, there's a lobster. In the image on the right, it contains the furniture and the lamp. And the one in the center actually is a cone. Okay. But obviously, as you're looking at that, you don't see anything. Right. There are a few of you weirdos that can see this right away. Call me. No, I'm joking. But anyway, there are some people who can see these right away. And there's others it takes a while to see. And then there's others they never see it. But the fact is, it is here. There are images in this. So in the handshake, you could see it right away. So if you were already you're at, let's say, what threshold is this? You're a little bit over 8 to 12 milligrams of fuel. If I pop one of these on the screen, you could see it right away. Because now your optical system is now handshaked with it's like a unified geometric field. It's like you're starting to get it. You're starting to understand what you're seeing, but from a totally different level to how you would normally perceive things. You're learning the language. Okay? The language is not English. So let's say you're now completely integrated. A handshake takes place, and then what they call world sheets begin to merge. So what this is you start in your language, you create a sheet of perceptions. Basically a geometric field that is allowing you to be able to now really see what's going on. So you think. Because real doesn't come until at least the final stage, which is wild. But this is allowing you to see it really, like when they talk about welcome to the real world and they pull the curtain back and then you're like, that's what happened to me in that room. And it was not on DMT. You see what I mean? We all can go through this phase and go through these phases in different ways. 2012 already happened. And it's more of a feeling than exactly what you necessarily see. But you do also see things. Because once the handshake, once you're like, okay, you refuse to now say that you're not supposed to be here. You're not seeing it. It's not real. This is not how it really is. You're not in none of those realms of doubt anymore, which is created, handshake, magic eye is open. Now you're starting to create a blanket of perception of what it really exists based on the language that you're being taught, which is predominantly coming through feelings, okay? Also, again, the geometrics that are displayed in this field, since they have quantified that geometry in a video game, I can create anything with this. Just to explain to you, like in Unity 3D, when we get this kind of complex supersymmetrical geometry, trees, or what can be perceived as trees, people, you think it would look like it has a hard edge, but it won't. And I'm going to explain that right here. Okay, this was an important part right here in the beginning. Okay, remember this? There she is. Some things just turn me on. You don't know what you're looking at, but I do. Or maybe you do. Okay, the box, but the real one. Remember, we were talking about how, okay, so this reality, the reason why they throw the triangle around all the time and the reason why they're using the straight lines all the time is because this is the square reality, right? This is the first big magnified lens on the HUD. It's a square. So what that is mimicking is it's mimicking that truly, though, what we're in, what is more closer to what we're in is a hyperbolic design. There's a curve to this. And so when you draw what you would perceive as a triangle on a curve, it looks like this. But if you drew it, so I guess what I'm getting at here is that this is how things really are. When we draw geometry, it's always with a curve. The geometry you see on the sand dollar that's a pentagram is not the straight line pentagram. The one that you see on the flowers is not a straight line pentagram. It's a bent. It's called convex or concave because the real field, the original field, is a hyperboloid. It's curved. Okay, so in the fake world, in the synthetic world, they use triangles because the triangle is a representation of this. Is everybody clear on that? Because I cannot move on from here if you're not clear on that this is a representation. The triangle is a representation of this. So this is why they use triangles and squares here so much, because they're pretending to be this. So a hypercube, it really looks like this. It doesn't look like the one even on Wikipedia. It doesn't look like the tesseract with the squares. But you see why they talk about the tesseract? And they use the tesseract because the tesseract would technically be a hyperdimensional vehicle for this space. Something that can travel through this space. Okay? So this is a time machine for this space. So I can move to 1980. I can move to 2029. I can move through all of that if I can use a tesseract. But I will be moving through a cubed world. Okay? And then, of course, we know this is why we get this symbolism of the cross, because man, the real Christ, crucified on the cross, is in this world, the cube world. This also connects with why the language is generally Hebrew or Arabic, which were built themselves. Look in the Kaaba. I know y'all love this. What time is it? We're almost there. 15 minutes. Hold on. Let's see if somebody has it. I mean, we pulled. Let me just go to my own archive. They be acting like they don't want to show you. Let me see here. Kaaba. Let's just see if I have it. I just wanted you to see inside of the Kaaba, they have Arabic written, and it's in a cube. It's like, it looks like a circuit board. Maybe somebody will share a link to that. I'm sure, I got some real questioners out there that have seen all my videos on this, but it's just inside of the Kaaba how they have Allah's name written in a cube. And when you look at that, man, we might as well plug this thing into a spaceship or something, because this looks more like a code. So anytime somebody can find that, just pull it up on the screen. But this is the cube. So this is all about how to master the actual three-dimensional cubed space that we're actually in, which is more like a straight line synthetic cube world. Lego. Right? Lego is logo. Logo is logos. which is basically the God of the world. The God of the world in the synthetic world is a cube. Why is it synthetic? Because it is taking from the original geometry, which is a hyperboloid. So all your stuff moves like this. Okay? But through Metatron's cube and all the stuff that they're playing around with, they have made a synthetic vehicle. So they can make money, they can move around in space and time and do all this kind of stuff because they have a synthetic vehicle, but it burns out the chakras. This is their alchemy. This is their monatomic gold. This is their version. It burns their chakras because you keep moving through physical world or synthetic physical world without going to nature. Right? And then your HUD changes to this. So you start perceiving only things through this. Right? So that's what's happening for those who like the symbolism. So here we go. Let's finish up here. Because I actually have some questions. I forgot about this. Okay. All right, let me go to, rapid fire. Here it is. This is how it is. We're at the end of the year. And it's always great to make sure that we check the space and make sure that the airlock is tight, especially with what we understand is going on. And there's always something here in Tribe that our ancestors are delivering to us. We give thanks to the ancestors also who continuously deliver through all of this. I'm not sure how many fields of illusion they're piercing through, but they're on deck because they're obviously in the origin point. And for us to be in our origins is key. And the space and time that we're in, especially when so many things are going on around us and the co-creative is dialing in the reset. And they're going back to the origin. So we might as well take advantage of that. That's the time to set your clock to 12 o'clock. Meaning that the origin of a galaxy, you know how this thing of the Gregorian calendars and all this kind of stuff. When you see lineups, you can set your clock to lineups. When you have a lineup in yourself, you set your clock, your circadian rhythm to your lineup. Your time, your space, your environment creates your language. But there's an original one, so you're not necessarily needing to recreate something. You just need to return to your origins. So in conclusion here, we then reach a space at 12 to 25 milligrams. Few reach this space, by the way, because they call it the waiting room. If I was to summarize the waiting room, this is the point where now the consciousness, it's less active now. It's not trying to show you the kaleidoscope. It focuses specifically on the vibratory frequency of the field that you're in, and it basically keeps oscillating that field. So again, if you find yourself in the middle of New York, it will probably do this. But you'll be in total, it'll be like because you get this massive feeling like you're just big, like you're bigger than everything. This is what happens in the geometry. Like the language that you're learning through the witness of the geometry is literally making you bigger than a square. You can see how that happens. The square was so limited. Now you just went through the hyperboloid. You went in beyond supersymmetry. You activated the chakra field. You felt what all that really means. And then now you're sitting at just the raw room. The same thing Neo was in when he was just sitting there with the guy who put the Matrix together. It's just like a waiting room. At this point, your final phase is, for those who make it beyond the waiting room, the breakthrough. Now imagine, we just went through all of this. So I'm not telling you go take DMT. I'm telling you that when you want to understand the layers of the fields of perceptions that we're in, when we walk out and we got to listen to folks act like they know what they're talking about, we got to see all of this fake falsehood, the fake language, the consumerisms and all this. You got to deal with this though. You still realize I'm dealing with this cube. This cube has some big time limitations. Now you're getting a glimpse into, this is actually making you happy. That's the only reason why you get to a breakthrough, because it's like tears of joy. You realize that the cube is indeed a limitation and that it is a false existence, if you may, compared to the real. You realize that you're infinite while the breakthrough is the infinite. You're like, I'm everything. I'm never going to die. I'm really everything. Now, mind you, some folks come back from the breakthrough and go back into depression. So I'm still telling you here, you have to hold space no matter what's going on. This is not, I told you the other day, DMT, ayahuasca is everyone does not, it doesn't change anyone. It's like a dream, and you get a glimpse of something and a taste of it. But if you're a fool anyway, 2 weeks later, you're going to be back to the same thing again. So DMT and ayahuasca, in retrospect, it was like another dream. You can only get the most of this stuff when you're already getting the most of yourself. Before I went on any of these journeys, I learned how to breathe first. Then this fell into my lap, and I was like, I guess that's what the cosmos wants. And boy, I got an opportunity to meet the cosmos on a whole different level. I was like, okay, now I'm really an optimist. That's why you always see me. You ever see me like, have you ever seen me really like sad for too long? Anybody that knows me, they can never say that it's gone on for a prolonged period. And it's because it's impossible for me. When we're talking about pure optimist, it's because I've already been out of the framework. So I already know that eventually we're going to go beyond the framework. But the wild part for me is to go out of the framework and then come back in. The integration is wild. This is like you're going from a superluminescent or hyperluminescent jellyfish back into a blue Lego. Basically, this is what the transition is like. You got to go back into speaking this block language. You got to go back into sympathizing and trying to earn money and all this. So, but you see how energetically, though, still everything is in place, because a square would obviously contain those kind of components. It would be so it just wouldn't be able to explain the true essence because of its geometric limitation. While when you go beyond this, and you will, this is why you would be able to go into something higher. This is, if you needed that extra insurance, like, why would it be better than where I'm at now? Because that's what some folks be doing. They be clinging on to this. They be clinging on to their life. They see everybody leave, but then they have somehow figured out that they're not going to leave. And then when they start leaving, they start getting scared and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, if this can assist you at all, I'm here to tell you that there's another side to this, and it's infinite. And what we're doing on this side right now is we're just working in that infinitude. We're like, we already know it's infinite, so we're putting things together. This is how these beings that also are working at a nefarious level, that's why they can build stuff as selfish as they are and know that they need hundreds of years to complete building it. I want to tell you that so you know this. These beings, these so-called controllers, they're so selfish. If they thought that they weren't going to be able to enjoy what is taking them thousands of years to build, they wouldn't even do it. They are in the first layers of these spaces. They're in the threshold. I told you their vehicle, they use their tesseract, and they ride around between the threshold and the chrysanthemum. Right? And then they're gods in that. But anything, once you take a handshake to the cosmos and you enter magic eye level, they don't run any of that. But it's important to understand that if you find yourself in a cubed space and you don't understand how to move in this field and what your powers are in this field, and someone else is very adept in this field, that's why they're richer. This is why they can abuse. This is why all that goes on, because they work the cube. When you know something greater, though, this is like the Russian doll phenomena. Your language is more superior. It's like what you see in law, trust law, contract law. It's higher than state law, local law, federal law. So there's a layer, rings within rings within rings. It's like an onion. So this is what the geometry is doing. So as we keep pushing through, we then find ourselves finally beyond the waiting room. We have the breakthrough. We realize all is indeed self, that it's not just a statement. And though for those who have had a little bit left to actually push into the burner one more time, because they got the no fear gear on, they Florida Donzi, After the 30 milligram point, some have recalled they reach here. I have reached here, the amnesia level. It's quite interesting. This stage is, what happens in this stage is like you get all sorts of stuff. I can't even explain this, but you forget it. It's wild. You come back into this space and you don't recall anything that happened in here. Nothing. Until after a while of continuously reaching level 6. It's like you get, man, I'm trying to articulate this right. It's like you catch it at one point. Like, wait a minute, something else happened. Then it could happen days later. Like, wait a minute, that wasn't in the dream. That was what happened in the DMT. Why didn't I remember that? So what you're doing is you're flexing a muscle that basically understands how to comprehend, if you may, in this new language, the infinite, beyond the breakthrough. Like this is beyond God level. You see what I mean? Like God as a word does not exist in this space. You learn, this is like the final levels, if you may, because the language literally is so difficult to translate. The experience, the moment you come back into the cube, it's like the experience can't fit in the cube. So it just stays there. It's like the cube becomes this filter, and this stuff in this level can't fit through this filter. This is like why, they say like the supreme God is not in this world. This is why people feel like God is missing, if you may, because what we're really talking about, it can't fit in a square. It's not a square. So it's like how that would come across to us is you would just forget it. You would forget about your connection with the true supreme being. What happened after you went through the breakthrough. Okay? So again, if you find yourself in the waiting room of life, or possibly just with the magic eye and at that level, or just working with a chrysanthemum a bit, or maybe even at the threshold, buckle in and be comfortable and know that comfort is what accelerates you to all the way in speaking truly to higher self in the ineffable. What generally is forgotten, real tongues, if you may. And you can see then, that's why I say you should be an optimist too. These are real experiences, even though we're tapping into this in the DMT way. Remember, DMT is released the moment you leave the space, the moment you leave the planet. So you're going to go through all these experiences, and all this is glorious stuff. Like you won't find a dull moment. So this is why you shouldn't be running around here with the long face, because they do give a brief warning here. And I think that this is going to be a warning to everybody, is about how they don't recommend anyone go through any of this depressed, drunk on alcohol and all of that, because what you do is you go through all of this, but you go through the inverted one, and it produces a hellish realm. There are hellish geometries. Basically, like if you went through this whole experience after a crazy argument and you got kicked out of the house and you felt like your energy was super low, this is not the go-to. You're going to go with the rocket ship all the way down, because there is something also underneath all of this. This is a fuel, so it's a rocket, so you're always going up, but there is a down.